So we'll have the questions at the end of the session for both of our speakers. It's my pleasure to introduce Farzana Bashiri, who's a PhD candidate in research policy, School of Economics and Management at the University of Lund, Lund University. So please, it's my pleasure to give her the mic right now. She's going to talk about conceptualizing scholar activism through scholar activism's accounts. Please.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today. My name is Farzana Bashiri. As I have been introduced, I'm based in Sweden at Lund University. I'm a PhD candidate within the research policy group, and I'm originally from Iran. It's for me a big pleasure to be here and to be able to discuss a topic that has been very close to my heart and central to my work. My PhD work for the past 4 years, but also being able to present and discuss it with a different kind of audience that I'm used to. So it's also, I'm really looking forward to all the discussion and exchanges. Over the past few years, one of the most striking aspects of that I've noticed about the concept of scholar activism is how difficult it is to define it and to grasp it. Its complexities also seem to grow for me as I delve deeper into the topic, like any other research topic. The more engaged you get in it, and the more closely you examine it, it becomes more nuanced and multifaceted. At the same time, I think it's important to step back sometimes and to be able to simplify some of the ideas, to be able to have a discussion about it. So maybe that's what I'm going to do today. However, before that, I want to emphasize that this concept can mean vastly different things to different people. For some, being a scholar activist might mean engaging in merely critical thinking and reflexivity and criticizing existing systems of power and injustices. For others, it might be more outward, active work involving working with policymakers, as well as social movements and activist organizations. And there are many different different perspectives, but that highlight the fluidity and the contested nature of this term. Given this ambiguity, I approach my research with the aim of keeping an open mind and not imposing a rigid definition of scholar activism, but to understand how to identify with the label, conceptualize it. That was the foundation of writing this book chapter. So I wanted to explore the perspective of those who use and embody the term scholar activism. To make sense of this complexity, I adopted an inductive approach, letting the voices of those closest to the phenomena guide my analysis. I did a systematic review of the literature and analyzed 25 papers written by scholar activists on their scholar activism. These papers not only describe their individual experiences, but also attempted to theorize and conceptualize what a scholar activist means to them. We must understand that the scholar activism, although not well established as a concept, it is not entirely new. Scholar activists use parallel concepts that have been well established in their respective intellectual and activist fields to describe their work. Examples are like organic intellectual, which was coined by Gramsci, intellectual activism, coined by a feminist scholar, Patricia Collins, or public intellectual that was popularized by Said, and others that have been used to, that have been employed closely with the scholar activism. However, despite the diversity of fields and approaches, there were certain recurring themes suggesting a possibility of finding a common ground and a shared language or a red thread among them to define and conceptualize scholar activism. So I found 3 main components that they use, that scholar activists use to that were foundational in their accounts to describe scholar activism. The first one, I name it criticality. Scholar activism starts with a critique of hidden assumptions, power, and hegemony, and systematic injustices. This includes critiquing racism, sexism, colonialism, and also neoliberalism, which is increasingly close to the lived reality of a scholar activist who are based in academic institutions, and other forms of systems of domination. It is also a critical look inward, which involves reflexivity, as a scholar activist examine their own roles and institutionalities, recognizing the ways in which their identities and privileges intersect with their work. So basically, to simplify, scholar activism maybe starts with seeing the problem, understanding and noticing the problem from a critique. And then the second foundational element was, as I call it, normativity. This critical foundation, seeing the problem, leads to taking a normative position, a sense of direction, a set of values and goals that guide a scholar activist endeavors to change these problematic situations. Normative orientation shows the direction of change. Normative orientation can be motivated with different theories of change, all ideas that inform the ways we want things to change and the quality of that change as well. And based on the scholar activist accounts, one central component of this normative orientation is social justice. So this has been the biggest red thread, basically, running through the whole literature, that to address social injustices is a main component of that normativity. But at the same time, neoliberalism, resistance towards neoliberalism also emerges as one of that component of that directionality. But these two components, in a way, remain on the level of ideas, and like the criticism and the directionality, goals and values. But then scholar activism, in a way, kind of signals a form of action, right? So where do these criticality and normativity translate into action? There comes the third component, which I call active engagement. I want to challenge the notion of action here a little bit and use engagement instead, because as I noticed, the active part, the doing part of scholar activism can be a bit different than what we conceive of action, which is mostly understood as hands-on outward practice, loud and visible. Active engagement can also include the quality of engagement. For example, one form one form of it is emotional engagement. That has been emphasized a lot in the literature. Essentially, scholar activism is viewed as an emotional response to social issues, to injustices, anger, sadness, discomfort, frustration, tensions, which often serve as catalysts for further action. Scholar activism can be deeply personal and emotional. Scholar activism also requires long-term commitment because it aims at social change and averting injustices, and change takes time. One cannot, as a rather privileged academic, enter a community, for example, for short-term data collection and leave, and assume that this is scholar activism. This will reinforce the same hierarchies of privilege one has been criticizing, a form of academic extractivism, let's say, but change needs a longer-term commitment to causes, gaining trust of activists and other community members. And yet this commitment is challenging for academics. This has been also recognized, given the dual demands of being both scholars and activists. Balancing these roles is particularly difficult in a neoliberal academic system that imposes ever-increasing pressures, more administrative tasks, more students to teach, more papers to grade, and etc., etc. These pressures leave less time for sustained community engagement, creating tension and complicating the practice of the scholar activism. Engagement can take more tangible forms as well, like engaging in certain forms of pedagogy. The scholar activists who engage in activist teaching see education as inherently political. There is nothing neutral about education. Education can be emancipatory and prepare students as agents of change rather than cogs in the machine. Research is another avenue for activism. Participatory, collaborative, and action-oriented forms of research, for example, allows a scholar activist to address critiques of hegemony while engaging with communities as equals. This approach breaks traditional power dynamics, particularly when working with historically marginalized communities, and emphasizes co-producing knowledge rather than conducting research on communities. Collective action and social movements also is another aspect of that active engagement. While individual efforts can be significant, collective action is emphasized and it emphasizes solidarity and shared goals. Within social movements, scholars can assume various roles as teachers, as researchers, as experts, narrators, public intellectuals, leveraging their knowledge and expertise and their academic capacities also to support and deepen the work of these movements. And to sum up, I want to emphasize that historically, scholar activism has been influenced by several intellectual traditions. Feminist perspective, popular education, critical social theory, for example, have all shaped its development. And influential figures, for example, like Antonio Gramsci, Angela Davis, Patricia Collins, Paulo Freire, to name a few, have provided foundational ideas. However, it is important to recognize that these intellectual developments co-evolve with those broader social and political movements outside of the academy. And to just summarize a few of the highlights of this book chapter is that the element of justice has been really integral to the scholar activist accounts. And also that scholar activists assume various roles as teachers, researchers, translators, facilitators, and experts. And also that it entails an interpersonal and emotional and committed quality. While the concept of scholar activism is not new, we have named a few of other parallel concepts, it seems to be gaining a new momentum. The media and sometimes academic literature engaging based on scholar activism by questioning whether academics should engage in activism or not. But they do take for granted that academic activism can mean a variety of practices and ideas and philosophies. I believe it's also important to look beyond that debates and study the empirical phenomena. And scholar activism is happening regardless of individual positions on its legitimacy, just as the relationship between industry and academia that has been studied and criticized, and so should academic activism be given the space that it deserves. The scholars bring legitimacy, credibility, and capacity to enact social change in diverse ways. Some work with governments, with corporates, with industries, and some work with social movements and activist organizations. These different forms of engagement can all offer opportunities for good research, while also there can be pitfalls that science can get influenced by those other values. It is essential that academia provides a space for this work to be understood, challenged, and defined, fostering a deeper connection between scholarly pursuits and the pursuit of justice. So, thank you so much for giving me the space. I don't want to talk too much, and I really look forward to the discussions.